I am angry. I'm not just angry today, and I am not just angry alone. I'm standing on over 50 years of collective community anger with the pace of air quality improvements. I'm standing alongside over 30,000 smell Pittsburgh complaints submitted since late 2016. I hold in my heart the concerns of every person who ever had to use an asthma inhaler in this region. I'm troubled on behalf of every single person admitted to the emergency room for asthma. I cry out on behalf of every person who got lung cancer last year. So yes, I'm angry, and my anger is growing along with that of many others who find me to vent their anger, exasperation, frustration, and outrage at the slow pace of air quality improvement in our region. I'm going to pause here to unfurl 1/3 of the Smell Pittsburgh complaints have been printed in a scroll that's over 200 feet long. This scroll has about 11,000 Smell Pittsburgh complaints, and it's right here. It's in two pieces because it ripped one time. We're going to unroll it, and you can just see. Just remember, this is about 11,000 complaints of the 33,000 complaints that have been submitted since late 2016. We started reading these complaints at the health department, but it was absurdly slow because we could never catch up with the number of complaints actually being submitted. We could read smell complaints at every meeting, every speech, at every slot, and never finish because we're submitting them too fast. Today, I'm particularly angry that the ACHD has an air quality mitigation plan for short-term air pollution episodes that is so old, it doesn't even have a threshold for PM 2.5 pollution. There's no PM 2.5 level written down at which an industrial facility would be required to reduce emissions. And the PM 10 levels that must be exceeded are so high that Pittsburgh would probably look like New Delhi on one of its worst days, or Sydney, Australia during their recent wildfires, just to trigger the levels required to hold industry to account. What kind of regulation is that? Is that our standard? Wildfires and New Delhi bad days? Because it is actually our standard. It may not look like wildfire smoke most days, but approximately 130,000 people live within a 5-mile radius of the Clairton Coke Works property. And the people in this area have air that is worse than 91% of the entire country for particulate matter. And those particles generally accompany stench from hydrogen sulfide. And the complaints are increasing. December 2019 had the second most complaints of any month on record, beaten only by September, which had over 77 complaints on average per day. And in 2019, there were 12 days with over 200 complaints. 8 of these days happened since September 1st, 2019, which is, as you will remember, after they cleaned up the fire at Clairton Coke Works and got back online for normal operations. It's worth noting, though, that only 3 of those days were during the short-term pollution event. So I asked this question of the ACHD, as you develop the new regulations, how will you set the action levels? Will you include community feedback in that process? Will foul industrial stench play any role? How long does an inversion need to be in order to trigger action? How predictable does the inversion need to be to trigger action? We regularly have over 150 inversions per year. Will you force U.S. Steel to reduce operations 150 times in a single year? And what's your plan for standing up to U.S. Steel when they inevitably complain and quite possibly litigate to get your new regulations watered down? It is the job of our local elected officials to act as the ultimate protector of the health of the people of Allegheny County. The protection of our health should be the highest priority for our public servants. And sadly, that is not the case today. Too many of our local leaders side with polluters instead of us. It is not acceptable for elected officials to allow industries to create higher cancer risks and deny local citizens our right to clean air. We need the ACHD to move at the pace of health, not at the pace most convenient for U.S. Steel and local politicians who take their money. Show us that you take your name, the Allegheny County Health Department, seriously, because we seriously depend on you for protection from profit-hungry polluters, and we are angry about the job you're doing with that. Thank you.